My name is RG, and welcome back to the What's Worth Watching channel, a channel for TV and film lovers who want real, agenda-free views on the latest releases. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at one of the biggest surprises of the year, Joker Folie Deux. But sadly, it was a surprise for all the wrong reasons. Despite being one of the most highly anticipated releases of the year, and coming off the back of the huge success of its predecessor, Joker Folie Deux is one of Hollywood's biggest failures in recent years. In fact, despite only releasing in early October, Warner Bros. Decided to give up on its theatrical run and released it online less than a month later. Therefore, I'm going to be delving into how it went so wrong for the film, and whether it deserved to be such a huge flop. So, like many of you, I was a huge fan of the first Joker film. It was a brilliant character study that uniquely observed Arthur Fleck's descension into madness, and ultimately becoming one of the most iconic comic book villains of all time. With the film not having Batman and being made on a relatively low budget of around $55 million, expectations for the film were somewhat tempered. However, the reaction from the public was something that even Warner Bros. Didn't expect, as the film was a smash hit, grossing over $1 billion at the box office, which made it the highest grossing R-rated film of all time. Well, until a little film called Deadpool and Wolverine came along and took the Clown Prince's crown. It received a fresh critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes, an 89% audience rating, as well as an 8.4 on IMDb. It was also nominated for 11 awards at the Oscars, and it took home 2 wins on the night, one for Best Original Score and another for Best Lead Actor, with it being Phoenix's first ever Oscar win. With the film not being a part of the larger DC universe, it was expected that this would be just it. It would be a one and done. However, when you make a film that does as well as the first film did, it was inevitable that Warner Bros. Would go to Todd Phillips and try to convince him to do another. That was only half the battle though, as Joaquin Phoenix is notoriously difficult to get back to do sequels, so the fact that he was willing to return to play the role had me confident that the film would be excellent, as he surely wouldn't come back just for the money. And in fairness, when the trailers were released, my excitement only increased, as the trailers were excellent, with the teaser trailer ending on genuinely one of the best final shots I've ever seen. But if the film had so much going for it, and so much anticipation, then how on earth did it flop so badly? Well, as a deranged mentally ill clown so eloquently puts it,
Police, get what you fucking deserve!
Sorry, I had to. So, taking place 2 years after the events of the first film, Joker Folie Deux tracks Arthur's time in Arkham Asylum as he prepares for the trial of the century, where it will be decided whether he's responsible for his crimes or if it was caused by multiple personality disorder, with it being the Joker rather than Arthur Fleck who's the real perpetrator. Whilst at the asylum, he meets another inmate called Lee Quinzel, who's more commonly known as Harley Quinn, who he falls in love with, and a weird, kind of romantic, musical courtroom drama ensues. And let's start with the positives, mainly the performances, as everyone on camera does a pretty good job. Lady Gaga is perfectly fine as Harley Quinn. We all know that she can sing, and Brendan Gleeson was another highlight in his role as one of Arthur Fleck's abusive guards. Unsurprisingly, Joaquin Phoenix is the film's standout performer. Once again, he's really good. You've got to admire his commitment to the role, as he's lost a significant amount of weight. You can literally see his bones piercing through his skin. It's honestly quite disturbing, but fair play to the guy. Just like in the first film, it's impossible to know exactly what's real and what's in his head. Every few minutes, the film breaks out into song. We're all a part of the Joker's stage play, as his imagination and psychosis peaks. The fact that it was a musical was a big concern for many people going into the film, and unfortunately, those fears were realised here. Whilst the film moves at no faster than a snail's pace throughout its runtime, it feels like it comes to a complete halt at every musical section. They're not fun to watch, and they're not imaginatively choreographed. They're just kinda there. Like, I watched the film only a few days ago, and I can't remember any standout musical numbers. They use a lot of popular songs to convey how Arthur is feeling, but they're not given any sort of energy or flair. It was really disappointing. Granted, I'm not a musical fan, so maybe I'm biased, but I do think that they added virtually nothing to the film, and if anything, actively harmed the overall experience. Although thinking about it, if you took away the musical numbers, you'd actually be left with very little. What's left would be a very drab story that doesn't really go anywhere. I learnt nothing new about Arthur, and even his relationship with Harley Quinn was uninspired. I never truly felt their passion, as it was barely developed. And I get that this is subjective, and it doesn't add much to the overall conversation, but my god, the film is just boring. Like, it's painfully dull. Todd Phillips is so desperate to subvert expectations of the first Joker film and of the character himself that he seemingly forgets to make an engaging story, or at least put a bit of effort into the musical numbers. I've heard some people claiming that they're meant to be underwhelming and lifeless. You know, that's the point. But I couldn't care less. Like, if I take a shit on the floor, I don't expect people to applause, even if I planned out precisely when and how I would take this shit. At the end of the day, I've still taken a shit on the floor, so I can't be surprised if people think it stinks. Funnily enough, Quentin Tarantino really enjoyed the film, because he felt it was saying fuck you to comic book geeks, and fuck you to the movie audience. So in essence, Todd Phillips is the Joker in this scenario, and he's taking shots at everyone, and he doesn't give a damn. And honestly, that is what it feels like. But that's not a good thing. The first film was loved for a reason, so why are you trying to punish the fans of it? It's trying to be meta, but that doesn't make it an effective movie. As an overall film, I don't think it's very good. However, I do concede that there could be some interesting video essays analysing the film, as there is a lot going on under the surface. Todd Phillips has a lot to say about the movie industry, obsession, and how we idolise false heroes. But just because you've got something to say, doesn't mean we have to like your film. It feels like a film made for hipster students to analyse at university, whilst telling anyone who didn't like it that you just don't get it, man. Some films are great on the surface, but they don't have much depth. Then the best films are great on the surface, and they have depth and meaning. But with the Joker sequel, it's in a unique position where it has depth, but nothing on the surface to enjoy. I love when a film has something to say, but the way you say it is ultimately the most important thing. Overall, Joker Folie Deux is not a film I could recommend. Conceptually, I think it's brilliant. Like, I bet the Warner Brothers executives heard Phillips' pitch for the film and were excited by it, but the execution left me incredibly disappointed, so I'd have to give the film a thumbs down. So I think it's fair to say that Joker Folie Deux was a bit of a disappointment, not just for me, but for general moviegoers, and failed in every metric when compared to the first film. But Warner Brothers have only themselves to blame for this, as they made numerous huge mistakes when it came to the film's development. Warner Brothers were so blinded by the success of the first film that they would do whatever it takes to get Todd Phillips to make a sequel. They gave him entire creative control, no test screenings, and no oversight from above. Whatever he wanted, he could do. This was his film. This level of control is something rarely given to directors. Only the absolute elite, like Nolan, Tarantino, and Spielberg, get anywhere near this much power when it comes to the projects. But they have a massive track record of success. Todd Phillips is undoubtedly a talented director, but he's not on their level, and he hasn't earned that level of trust. And when you look at his track record when it comes to sequels, it makes this decision even more shocking. Because just look at the Hangover movies. The first one was huge. It put Bradley Cooper and Zach Galifianakis on the map, and is generally considered a modern classic. And whilst I like the sequel more than most, it was undoubtedly a step down from the first, and a disappointment to many, with the third film in the trilogy being even worse. Giving creative control to a single person is a rarity, and for good reason. Filmmaking is a collaborative process with key benefits, mainly being that you get to hear from a variety of people, and you can take all of their opinions into account. Having one sole vision can work, but it's a huge risk that requires real genius for it to pay off. And what made it an even bigger risk is that Warner Brothers were happy to give Phillips as much money as he wanted for the film's budget. Somehow, the film ended up costing around $200 million to produce, which is almost 4 times as expensive as the first film. When you take into account marketing and the cut cinema chains take from tickets, the film would have needed over $400 million just to break even, and it's not even come close to it, making it one of the worst failures in Hollywood history. And what makes this even crazier is how, if the film had just been made on a similar budget to the first, then it would have actually been profitable. I mean, it's not like the film looked 4 times as good as the first, or even felt it, so it certainly shouldn't have cost 4 times as much. This shows how important it is for films to be made on a reasonable budget. Anytime a studio produces a film that requires $500 million at the box office just to break even, I'm completely baffled. So Hollywood executives will need to be more financially responsible with the movies in future. And most importantly, focus on the quality, as without a quality product, the chance of your film receiving strong word of mouth and being successful diminishes rapidly. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film a D grade, which is the lowest grade ever given to a comic book movie. And with the word of mouth so poor, it can be no surprise to see that the film had an astronomically bad second weekend box office collapse, with it dropping a record 81%. Joker Folie Deux is a film that many will want to forget, but I hope that Warner Brothers learn from the mistakes so we get fewer situations like this in the future. Otherwise, that spells problems for the industry. So, for those of you that have watched the film, what did you think of it? And if you're someone who did enjoy it, why do you think audiences have rejected the film? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe for more. And I'll see you next time for another video. Goodbye.